Hello, Something Guys and Gals. This is Something Guy 912 back once more to delve into the annals of the canals. Following up from D1 underscore canals underscore 01 is D1 underscore canals underscore 01A, or alpha as I'm going to refer to it, as to not cause confusion between it and the prior map. As I clarify 1,000 times over, this series is me tackling the map design in terms of its realism and continuity with the prior and successor maps' own designs. This will be very important for the canal maps as, with gameplay a higher priority than world building, a lot of creative liberties are made to compensate for it. With that waffling out of the way, let's delve into it. Alright, and now we are in D1 underscore canals underscore 01 alpha. And following up from it, before we bring up the all these freight containers, this section is obviously supposed to have a bunch of boards here, but for some reason when I load up the map, it doesn't have this sequence. But regardless, I think if these boards were here, I think it's a little bit, like, inexplicable why there would be so many boards to prop up this tanker just to have it crash down. I guess it's just to show off the physics engine, but regardless, like, realism-wise, it's a little bit weird. And now, let's address this. So, not only did you have this freight container that was plopped down perfectly parallel with the catwalk, you have all of these, like, train cars just, like, plopped down here. And I'm visualizing the drop ships, like, dropping these down from, like, the little arms for seemingly no other reason, just here and here alone. And, like, obviously they wanted you to, like, carefully navigate through these, but I mean, you can also, in just the normal game, you can actually climb up on these and just kind of realize that you were just navigating through just a rough patch of all these freight cars for seemingly some reason. There's also a lot of scrap in general here that just seems just thrown about. Like, you know, you have this oven, you have this, like, I think it's like a steam pipe or something like that. It's all over the place, and I don't know why it would be placed around like this. So, going here, we are nearing the turret section where all the refugees are going to get shot by the civil protection. But before we address that, you'll notice up above is this overpass that is, like, crumbling, which is kind of cool if you forget the fact that to the left of us is still the train line. And you can see from just out of bounds how it would have collided with this overpass if the other map had loaded in, from the previous map had loaded in. And not to mention the fact that I don't even know what this crash overpass would have been leading into, because it's not like there's like a road or anything that would file in on this, so it's just a little bit odd to have this be detailed here. I mean, it is impressive that they were able to detail, like, a destroyed overpass in this faction. It just obviously causes collision errors and whatnot. And then, before we go into the turret itself, we have these pipes here. And these pipes, as well as the canals, is like the first major implication of the Combine's effect on Earth as a whole, that this area has been dried out. The problem comes as to how high the water was originally. And I've come across this workshopper, and he also has a YouTube channel, named RileySV, or Commander Riley. And he makes a bunch of these pre-war maps, and I'll play some background footage of his pre-war interpretation of D1 underscore canals underscore R01 alpha. But this map in particular has a whole slew of pre-war versions of the maps from Half-Life 2 before the Combine came in. But of course, you know, bearing in mind, this is his interpretation of it. It's not going to be like what it actually might have been. It's just a baseline, like, idea of what the canals used to be like. Because I think there are some noticeable errors or oversights that he had made. But still, it's impressive because, honestly, I was, like, trying to figure out if I could figure out a way to code in like, water in this, but I am not an expert at Hammer Editor, and I do not know if that would even necessarily, like, help my confusion with some of the geography of this level. Regardless, so we'll go past here. Now, if this area is supposed to be filled with water, right? Why would there be lights here? Like, is the idea that, like, somebody working in sewage would, like, you know, trounce their way in here? Because this little area with this grate kind of implies that, you know... Shut the hell up! Oh, wait, actually, I need to press the button. There we go. Then they'll shut up. Anyway, so this grate, you know, obviously implies that there's a water flow. And I took in pictures of things like this before to kind of give you an idea of, like, my knowledge about this. Or at least my rough knowledge about it. So, obviously, this area would be filled with water. So, all this here would make sense in terms of this being a refugee camp, since this is Station 12. Yeah, Station 12. But, of course, again, you know, with these lights and whatnot, these lights were obviously here before all this. So it kind of leads into the question as to, like, what this service, as well as this ladder being here to climb up from. And then obviously you shoot these Combine, you take over the turret, and then there's a whole turret section where you kill a bunch of Combine and drones, and then an APC drives through here. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole rigmarole of killing the Combine for it to show up. I'll just tell you where it stops, because it stops roughly about, like, almost right next to where the collapsed overpass would be. So that's kind of interesting. I mean, obviously this is not even, like, modeled in the slightest, because obviously you're not even meant to see this from up here. It is also interesting to consider that there's this little bridge that's near where this collapsed overpass would be. It's just, you know, again, I'm assuming that this architecture with this and this, like, were made around the same time, like, relatively the same time. I mean, not to mention the fact, like, why is this, like, wooden platform here? Obviously, it's just here so you can shoot it down when a civil protection officer shows up to be like, oh yeah, you can kill them through destroying, you know, physics procs and whatnot. So, with that, we will proceed through into the dungeon with more and more just pipes and scrap and just whatever hell they can just stuff in here. And then, you know, we'll see the APC that drive by. There'll be this woman that'll talk to us and say, oh, the station has been raided. But before we do that, we'll go to the right here. And something I noticed, this is just an Easter egg, if you will, is in this pipe, there's a barnacle. Even though there's, like, no way to get in here. And obviously, it's just a dead end of brick, so this pipe is not really doing anything. I just find it interesting that they even bother to put this barnacle here, despite the fact that you can't, like, interact with it other than killing it. Like, for example. It's just interesting that way. You know, they bothered to put that in there, even though it wouldn't have made much of a difference, so... And yeah, she'll talk to us, and going back to RileySV's, interpretation of the pre-war version of this map, the water kind of goes up, like... Let me get the crossbow out just to give you an idea. It goes, like, about here. I mean, obviously I have the background footage to give you a clear indication, but the water doesn't, like, flow into this pipe. So it kind of makes it as though this pipe section, as well as these pipe sections, are kind of useless. Unless, like, high tide comes around. Because, I mean, obviously, you know, going back, we have more of these, angular grates that are meant to direct the flow of water, or at least slow the flow of water in some form or fashion. So we'll go through here. There's a whole section where they blow this up and throw a bunch of barrels down. We'll just go through that. And then before we had to fight these Combine, up here, you'll notice, is yet another substation that has fences that cover all around it, but obviously they are a little too low. They're a little too low for how tall this, like, generator thing is. Which is, again, interesting to note those out, considering the sort of inconsistent nature of the design of these substations throughout some of the prior maps I've covered thus far. So, you know, you have to fight these combine, blah, 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 blah. There's more scrap and shit. And then you have this bridge section where, you know, you shoot the barrels and it has this whole sequence where they all, you know, get collapsed under and all the... You know, I'll just do it to show you. It's like, woo, wow, really cool and shit. You know, this collapses down. You know, this is a really impressive display of the physics engine for its time. But going on from that, so if you remember, the APC drove through here, and obviously it just goes to a straight dead end. Now, if this was more detailed, and this bridge was, you know, more of this was more detailed, and this bridge is supposedly like a way for traffic to go through, the best, like, the best interpretation is that vehicles have to really take this really sharp turn here, and then here, to go to here. So, yeah, it doesn't really follow. I should also mention that there's another one of these weird, like, orange slanted roofs here from the prior map, although it's not really conveying much of anything, as far as I'm concerned. So we'll go through here, they'll drop down, you can shoot them if you want. We have another kind of like caved in flow system, and again, the pre-war interpretation kind of just goes with just having some ladders to go up to them, kind of making me wonder if these were actually servicing the point of flowing water in. And, you know, not to mention too, you know, these barrels, like, obviously, again, it's just more of a show of the physics engine, but I kind of find their placement here tacky in terms of realism, like some rebel or refugee bother to put them in such a, like, fashion to hide, like, what? All of these barnacles here, I guess? And I mean, not to mention this whole section with the, I don't know what you call it, a causeway, or just another, like, way to flow in water. I do not know what this is supposed to serve, because you have these two pipes, and then you have these huge dividers with, like, grates on either side of them. So I don't know if, like, the top part here is supposed to be, like, some kind of roadway, or possibly a graded sidewalk. Like, it's very hard to, really understand it. Even using the pre-war version of this doesn't really give much of a strong conveyance as to what this initially served. So we'll go through that. And this is the only area that still has a considerable amount of water. In fact, I think this water is basically at the same level as the pre-war version. In fact, something I forgot to mention is this texture, if you can tell, has this, like, darker spot here, which kind of gives an idea that the water probably used to be at this level and didn't get much higher beyond this point. So that kind of gives us somewhat of a baseline for the water level. And that will be very important for future maps going forward, especially the coast maps, because the only things that I can, like, usually use to gleam is the map that is in-game. It gives you an idea of the water level, as well as, again, RileySV's pre-war versions of the coast maps. That can help me give me a kind of a through line as to what these, what the areas of those maps originally served. So, going back to here, you have these barrels, you know, you have to dodge them and whatnot. And obviously, you know, you have these weird, like, wooden support columns, but I don't know what they're supporting. Like, I would have assumed that these were here to block out, like, I don't know, flows of, like, pipes and whatnot that were not being used, but as far as I'm aware, they're essentially used for support, but they're not supporting anything. Like, this is already kind of supported by itself. So it's just a little bit odd. Like, this one, with its placement here, does make me think that these are supposed to be used to block out pipes, because it's, like, angled in such a way that it was up against this pipe here, but I guess not. And then, you know, more pipes show up, they're gonna blow up, and then you have this ladder that you have to get up to and on this platform, which is a little bit of an interesting thing, that there's a ladder here with a wooden platform. I don't know what these would have served. Like, the idea that somebody would have actually swam in here, but they can only swim one way because there's not a ladder on the other side of this platform. Just obviously, this is just very gamey. I mean, not to mention in terms of gaminess, is we have more of these wooden slat, like, supports that are just kind of set around in such a very perplexing way. Well, they're not supporting anything. There's no reason that they should be looking like this, like, in the slightest. Like, obviously, this is just here for you to just navigate and get to the other side of this pipe. That's basically all this is here for. It's very unapologetic about the fact that this is all that it's here for. And that is the last of this map before the next transition. So that is all for D1_canals_01 alpha. And that was that for D1_canals_01 alpha. Tune in next time when I cover the next map in the root canal chapter of Half-Life 2 and of this series.